All right, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and start the recording, and we're going to start right on time today. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about sway. So I'm going to share my screen with you right now. And you should be able to see my presentation. So we are going to talk about Microsoft Sway today and some of the ways that I've seen it utilized in various settings, classrooms, trainings, etc. So let's get started. There's no music. Again, we're starting. So if you hear my voice, you're in the right place. And if you are going to share, you can unmute toward the end when we get to that point in the webinar. Again, everyone, my name is Michelle, but I'm sure you know that because you've joined me before in previous sessions. And I'm here in Miami, Florida. I'm the Microsoft Learning Consultant for this area. So if you are going to get social, here are some hashtags, or here's the Microsoft hashtag in my social media account if you wanted to go ahead and do that. And we're going to talk about how to use Sway in a modern classroom setting. And it helps to address the 21st century skills, because we're not just utilizing Sway as a tool. We want to use it to enhance the experiences students receive in a modern classroom environment. In case you have any questions, there is a parking lot channel in the team that will allow you to post questions that can be answered really at any point and not just today. So if you want to utilize that, that would be great. And again, I know I talked about, utilizing those 21st century skills and the Microsoft tools, because the purpose is to really empower the students to achieve more by showing them how to utilize the tools that they have access to, but strengthen the skills. And in this webinar series, we do talk about the tools. You get an overview of the tools, but we also talk about how the tools can be used to foster those 21st century skills, such as creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. Another reminder here is, in case you are in the team, just note that if you want to go back to your school district, you do have to switch your tenants from the team that you're in right now. So just an FYI. So again, the 21st century skills, here's an overview of them: critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. And these are the things that help to create that modern classroom and modern work environment. So making sure that we're fostering these skills with our students and in our educational settings. A great resource to really see how this is done would be the 21st Century Learning Device Design course that is on the Microsoft Educator community. In that course, you have access to these big ideas that breaks down each of the 21st century skills. And you also have access to rubrics that define each 21st century skills, so that you can see what to look for when you are creating these learning tasks for students and you want them to utilize, or you want to address these skills, having a shared responsibility for collaboration, for example, making sure they are making interdisciplinary connections for critical thinking, for creativity. There is levels of innovation and so on and so forth. And for communication, students are supporting their communication. They have extended communication. So with that was a quick overview. We are going to get into Microsoft Sway. So why are we choosing Sway? Because there are other tools that have similar functions. Some teachers prefer PowerPoint. Some teachers prefer other apps like maybe Prezi. So Sway is just another tool that can be utilized. Well, obviously it is free. Your students may have access to an Office 365 account through your district's tenant. If they create a personal Microsoft account, they have access to Sway for free as well. So in case your district does not have an Office 365, the students just have to create a personal Microsoft account. And Sway is one of those apps within that personal Microsoft account. It's cloud based, so it syncs. So as long as you're connected to the internet, you have very, very minimal chance of losing content that you've added or typed, as long as you're connected to the internet. And you could search and add content right in the app. Sway also has many templates to start from. You don't have to start, from scratch or start with a blank screen. You can choose from a template and just use that to add your information and your media, your multimedia. The presentations do turn out dynamic and professional looking because you're spending less time worrying about transitions and colors and styles, because the AI within Sway is very intuitive, and it takes care of that for you. As creating a Sway does cut down on time, again, because you don't have to worry about things like, will this animation show up when I switch my slide, and so on and so forth. You don't have to worry about if my background color and my font color fit together. You just add your content and Sway takes care of it. And sharing a Sway is quite easy. All you have to do is hit the share button and get the link. And then you can get the link and share it via email. You can share it in Teams, in any other application that you may utilize in your classrooms to share out content or communicate with your students. It's just a link that can be shared. Share it on social media, whatever your mode of communicating is with your students, you can share the link that way. And because you're sharing it, maybe you're sharing it using Teams. It can be viewed not just on computers, but it can be viewed on mobile devices, and the look of it is very nice, and it doesn't take away from, just because it's a mobile device, it doesn't take away from the content, or you're not going to miss the font size is not going to be too small or anything like that. And finally, users can collaborate in Sway. You have the option in Sway to have a link that is just a view link and a link that is an edit link, and that will allow multiple users, you share the edit link, to collaborate and create a Sway. So it's a great way for students to do small projects together, even for teachers to collaborate on tasks together within a Sway. Okay, so again, the possibilities of Sway: you can create, you can share, you can collaborate, and most importantly, you save lots of time. So we're going to talk about some tips or tricks, just some tips, again, that I've heard from teachers, I've seen teachers use in my role in the educational system that we've used ourselves. And so those are some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. So creating a course study guide. This is a tip for teachers. Basically, you're using Sway and you're adding the content in Sway, and you are building this throughout the school year to create this resource for students to always have as a guide. So you create the Sway maybe at the beginning of the school year or at the start of the semester. You share the link with your students. You're sharing the view-only link with your students. And again, sharing it with them with whatever communication method you use. So you share the link with the students, and then you build the content. So maybe you share it with them for after the first 2 weeks of school, and you only have content for the first.
+13059653459 is now joining.
Okay, welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining. So we were talking about using Sway as a tip for teachers to create kind of like a course study guide. and you create it at the beginning of the year. You share the link with students at the beginning of the year because that link never changes. Once you share that link, it stays the same, and you just have to make sure that, you know, you let the students know content has been added, go back and reference the link. And you're adding content, you know, after each lesson or each unit, however you structure your curriculum, you will add content, things that you can add. Perhaps you did a unit and you have PowerPoints to go with that unit, or maybe there are YouTube tutorials or Khan Academy videos, anything like that that can be added. You would add those PowerPoints for notes, those video tutorials, and perhaps you do a practice quiz within Microsoft Forms. You can embed that right in this way. So after the students review the content for that particular unit or lesson, they have a practice that they can complete. And then you start a new heading and you put your new topic and you add your content. And then you're constantly adding to it throughout the year just to build. And you're building this way for them. And you may choose to do it per semester, or you have this way for the whole year. I guess it would depend on the course that you teach. If you have an end of course exam, or you have, you know, an assessment, a summative assessment, this is a great resource for teachers to use and teachers to have for students so they can review from the very beginning of the year in September all the way to June, and they can see all your notes, all your tutorial videos, all your practice exams that, you know, they may have taken. They can view their results and maybe even retake it. And they have this to review for those summative assessments. It is a great way to help the students prepare and, you know, for you to also keep yourself organized. So that's tip one. The second tip here is creating a newsletter. A newsletter can be for a family newsletter, or perhaps you just do a newsletter for students. But you create a newsletter. You can decide on if you want to do it monthly, per 9 weeks, or per grading period. And so you decide on how you are going to distribute it. Again, you share it with the link. If you are sharing it with folks outside of your organization, so parents, for example, you may want to share the anyone link so that they don't have to sign in to view this way. If you are sharing with students only, then you don't need to worry about that. If you're doing a family newsletter, you may have students write content that can be featured in the newsletter, or maybe have students take on specific roles within the newsletter. In that newsletter, you can highlight, you know, your rules, your guidelines. You can highlight student projects. You could do a recap of events and the activities that occurred in your class for that grading period, that 9 weeks, that semester, that month. Okay, upcoming events and important dates. If you have a testing calendar, if you have important documents that may need to be shared with families, and you have your student features and anything else you want to add. But it's a great way to foster that communication with the parents and keep that communication going with families by just, you know, showcasing these things and putting them in this newsletter that's easily accessible. And so, again, Sway is a tool that you're using for it because it does save time and it has that professional look, that dynamic look once you start adding the content. So you don't really worry about what is the end product going to look like as long as you add your content there. Okay, and this is a tip. If you are, let's say you were asked to do a training for teachers on how to use Sway in your school, or, you know, in your department, or you just want to, you know, share the magic of Sway with folks. This is actually something that I learned about from a colleague, and we utilized this in my old school district in our training academy. So we would have teachers complete these tasks when they were learning about Sway. And so it was an assignment for them, and it would be on a familiar topic. So in Miami, in Florida here, of course, we have Disney, so everybody is familiar with Disney, but you can certainly change it. I've tweaked it so we used, you know, favorite superheroes, favorite movie. We did a bilingual summit, and I changed it from Disney to a country in Europe. or a country, with a different language. So it could be changed. It doesn't have to be Disney. That was just specific because everybody here is familiar with Disney. So the key here is to give specific roles and tasks. And the roles and tasks kind of are tied to the cards and the different cards. So for example, you may have a task where they're discussing their opinions and thoughts about Disney World or whatever the topic. So this is a great way to highlight the audio card and have them utilize the audio card. If they are, finding graphics and data and infographics and charts and things like that, it's a great way to utilize the image cards. So having those specific roles and tasks that the teachers need to, or students need to complete, is very important in this, because it's going to help them practice and play with the different sway cards, and they get to see those different features. And of course, you're going to have a way for them to share it with you. In this case, we were using a OneNote, so they shared it in the collaboration space. If you're using Teams, you can create an assignment and have them share it in the assignment, or have them post it in a reply to a conversation that you add to the Teams channel. But have them email it. So whatever your way is of sharing, have them share it so that you can showcase these examples, within the training if time permits. And this activity, although it says here you're in a team, you can certainly do it individually, or you could do it in a group. But I found that this activity is fun and it helps the teachers to practice. It helps the teachers to practice. Okay, so this one is actually not a course study guide. That is an error. This one, it's tied to the previous one where it was training, a sway training for educators. This one would be teaching students how to use sway. And I taught countless classes of students from elementary to high school on how to use sway. And this, for me, has been the most efficient way of doing it. So, of course, in this training, you're showing the basics of sway, cards, searching, how to add the content, and how to share. Those are the basic things that you'll talk about. Of course, as the students click around, they may discover other things, but you definitely want to go over those basics. You want to also tie it into whatever they're studying in that class. So you can ask the students to recall the lesson, a recent lesson or a recent topic. I can think of one particular classroom where the students were learning about, I believe, the Civil War. So they used their notes in their textbook to help them develop this way. So we talked about outlining, and we went over the basics of outlining, headings, subheadings, complete sentences, and all of that. And so the students developed an outline with facts about their topic. And again, they use their notes and they use their textbooks to first write these facts down. Now, this part is important because students do copy and paste from the internet. So they may go search the topic and copy and paste the content. This part was important because I wanted the students to write things down and cite things and put things in their own words. So when we did the outline and they wrote it down this way, they were able to just take that and type it into the text cards in the sway and then enhance it with the media. So they wrote their outline. They then used that information to create their sway. They added, their headings, text cards to represent each of those sentences, and then they used those media cards, whether they were images or videos, and they used that to enhance their presentation. So they practically had like a nice little research done while they were learning about sway. Okay, so this one would be how to teach sway to students. Now we're going to get into two examples from the classroom. And in these examples, you're going to definitely see how creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication comes into play. So in this example, this is actually a project that I worked with a teacher, Miss Mariquin, on, and she used her students were completing independent reading projects. So each student had to read a different book, and they chose books based on a list that she gave them, because she made those books available to them through a grant that she had received to purchase the books. So to kind of help, to kind of allow the students to be able to still have class discussions, even though they were talking about different books, she hosted Socratic seminars, and the students participated in literature circles about the literary devices and the elements. So they would talk about characterization, setting, plot, figurative language, motif, theme, current events. This part was an addition. She wanted the students to relate some of the events that were discussed in the book to actual events that were occurring in society today. So there was that real world connection, that interdisciplinary connection right there. And after those Socratic seminars, the students had to reflect, and those reflections were part of the sway. So the students were reading critically, and they were obviously using those cognitive strategies to be prepared for those seminars and those discussions. So the sway helped them to document their learning. They completed a book review. They documented, characterization by answering questions about characters, main characters, and conflict and things like that. They responded to questions about setting, plot, and so on, and they were able to reference this way in those discussions that they had, so that they could participate and engage fully. So there was critical thinking happening. There was definitely collaboration and communication happening, and creativity, because their responses were all different. They were talking about different books, but they were able to see similarities and differences between the characters. And even that current event connection, they were able to see how those themes emerged in the real world. So using sway as evidence of learning for a book, or maybe even the different topics that are reviewed in science and social studies. In this example, the focus would be creativity and communication here, but you're going to see again how it addresses all four critical thinking 21st century skills. So in this example, the students are creating digital portfolios to document their learning. They share this with the teacher, and the teacher gives them ongoing feedback. So it's kind of similar to what you saw with the teacher building the content for that course study guide, but the students make decisions here about what they want in their portfolio. And this is actually something they can even share with their families, so the families can see how they're doing throughout the year. So decide again on a timeline here. Does the portfolio happen per semester, or is it a portfolio for the entire year? And then you have to provide the students with expectations for the content. What my recommendation, and from what I've seen, that with this particular assignment that the teachers that have used, that I've observed using it, they have 2 to 3 artifacts weekly, and those artifacts can be, maybe a picture of a project that they did. It could be an audio recording of a part of a discussion, that, like a Socratic seminar, for example, that they took part in. It could be they upload a copy of their test that they received a 98 on. Maybe they have a video that they put together, and they're hyperlinks to that work that they put together, whether it's a video or a Wakelet or whatever it is. But they have these examples of content that demonstrate their learning. So they're not just adding these links and these artifacts, but they have to reflect on it. What was the process of learning like? What did they think they did well on? What could they have improved upon for the next time? They actually have to use metacognitive skills here to reflect on those 2 to 3 artifacts weekly. And this teacher will provide feedback to those, to those reflections. So it's an ongoing communication here between the students and the teacher, and the parents are able to see what their child is doing in class with actual proof. So it's evidence of student work. Um, and of course, you want to encourage them to make interdisciplinary connections as well to other classes. If they're learning about, if they're reading a book and in the book it talks about a character having Alzheimer's, and then that's something they're learning about in science, they can certainly bring those connections in. And, so the bullets here that you see on the left-hand side are just some guidelines for creating this portfolio and giving the students, steps for what they should do for this. But again, it's portfolios we know have many benefits. And as you can see in the quote, they aid students in metacognition, reflection, and ownership of learning. This is just a great way to give students voice and choice and power over their learning, and they're able to have pride in what they're doing in your class. And again, they can use it for an end of the year assessment as a review, because they have everything that they've done, or most of what they've done, that they can go back to for end of term assessments. All right, so in terms of collaboration, students, whether or not they were participating in discussions, they had a shared responsibility. They had to do interdependent work to be able to participate in those discussions, and that's where the SWAY came in. With critical thinking, you definitely saw they were constructing and applying knowledge, and even making interdisciplinary connections within those portfolios as well. They were making those real world connections with the book SWAY activity, where they had to find a current event, and communication across the board. They're expanding on their topics and their ideas. So here we are at the point, if anyone on the call does want to share with some ideas or some ways that you've used not Teams but Microsoft SWAY. How have you used it, and is there a specific project maybe that you want to talk about with using SWAY within your setting? If not, it's okay. Okay, and then if we have any questions, you feel free to ask questions. And if not, again, that's okay. I do want to share this with you on the MEC, the new Microsoft Educator community. I'm not sure if you've been on there yet, but there is a presenter-led training course, and it is about Microsoft SWAY, and it's about utilizing SWAY portfolios. So on the Microsoft Educator community, here's the course, and they have lots of resources here, which includes like a PowerPoint if you were going to do this particular activity with some faculty members, or the PowerPoint has reflection questions and things like that that you can utilize for your own. So there's a nice video and a nice description. So this is a course I recommend if you're interested in using SWAY as a digital portfolio piece. And they've even tied in Flipgrid here to this course, so you can see that right there. Okay, we are in January still. This has been a very long month, but we are gonna have there with the new year. Microsoft has released lots of updates, and some of these updates will go live toward the end of January and into February. So I would love to showcase some of these updates with you, but I wanted to make sure we had enough time for us to actually see these updates up here in the applications that we're using. And so at the end of February, we're going to talk about some of these updates, and their updates to PowerPoint and to Word and to even Office.com, Teams, and so on and so forth. So I'm really excited about this because there's so much power in these updates for our students and for our classrooms. Okay, and then this last, this slide here, this code, if you would like to redeem the code in the MEC to get points for this session, go ahead and do so. And I will post this within the Teams so that you can access it even after the call. And thank you for joining. I mean, we finished right at 30 minutes today. And I wanted to share this picture. I was in Redmond at the Microsoft headquarters just the beginning of January. So of course, everybody got to take pictures with the famous Microsoft sign. So thank you guys for joining the session tonight. Let's check the chat to see if are there any questions there? Nope. Thank you, Cheryl, for joining. I see your message. And if there's nothing else, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you guys. Always, you can always check the Teams for the video recording and any information. Thank you. Have a good night.